The sun is brutal. White hot, it presses down on the desert air until it feels solid, like something you could lean against. A line of exhausted men stumbles forward across the tarmac, boots scuffing, gravel, uniforms hanging loose on bodies that no longer fill them. They are German soldiers, Wehrmacht, recently captured in North Africa. You can almost taste the dust as they swallow, mouths dry, eyes squinting against the sky that feels too big, too blue, too calm for a world at war. Obergefreiter Karl-Heinz Muller grips his coat tighter as he walks. Not because he's cold, Texas is unforgiving, but because habit has replaced comfort. His fingers tremble slightly. Hunger does that, so does disbelief. They've been told this is a prison camp. They were warned about American brutality. They were prepared for beatings, starvation, revenge. What they were not prepared for is the smell. It hits them before they see anything. Not rot, not thin soup, but grilled meat, fresh bread, coffee, real coffee. A few men exchange glances. One chuckles quietly, the sound brittle, almost painful. Someone mutters, propaganda. It has to be. A trick to soften them up. Americans are good at tricks. Everyone knows that. The guards wave them forward. Calm, almost bored. No shouting, no rifle butts, just a line and food. Metal trays clatter as they're handed out. AUS. Ami cook, sleeves rolled up, barely looks at them as he spoons food onto plates. Not carefully. Not measured. Generously. Steak. Thick cuts. Still glistening. Potatoes with butter melting down the sides. Bread so white it almost looks unreal. Muller stares. His mind refuses to process it. For the last year, food meant turnip soup. Gray. Watery. He remembers scraping frost off a tin cup in Tunisia, pretending the ice was substance. He remembers men collapsing on marshes, not from bullets, but from emptiness. Now this, the man behind him whispers, almost angry, take it, before they change their minds. Hey, sit at long wooden tables under a mess hall awning. The first bite is cautious, then frantic. Knives shake. Chewing turns desperate. A few men cry silently, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on their faces. A few men cry silently, tears cutting clean lines through the dust on their faces. This isn't victory food. This is abundance. And it doesn't stop. When Muller finishes his steak, a U.S. guard walks by carrying a trash bin. Inside are scraps, thick scraps, uneaten meat, perfectly edible. Though guard dumps it without hesitation, Muller freezes. You can feel the moment's stretch seconds that feel longer than artillery barrages. His stomach tightens, not with hunger, but with something worse. Confusion. They throw it away. Not because it's spoiled, not because it's rationed. Because they don't need it. A murmur ripples through the tables. Eyes follow the trash bin. Like it's a funeral procession. Then comes dessert. Ice cream. Cold, white, smooth, served in scoops, so large they look almost obscene. Chocolate syrup, drizzled casually, as if sugar were limitless, as if milk were endless. As if cows themselves marched in formation behind the front lines. An older Feldrebel laughs. Loudly. Too loudly. This is madness, he says. No country at war eats like this. Muller docenti laughed. He watches an American soldier 2 tables away take one bite of his steak. Then push the rest aside to make room for dessert. Push it aside. The realization creeps in quietly. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout. It settles. If this is what prisoners eat, what do American soldiers eat at the front? If this is what they throw away, what must they still have? Muller thinks of letters from home. Of his mother apologizing for sending only crumbs of bread wrapped in paper. Of factories bombed. Of trains that never arrived. He looks around the camp. Trucks idled nearby. New ones. Clean, rows of them. Beyond the fence, rail lines stretch west, disappearing into a country that seems impossibly wide. This isn't kindness. This isn't mercy. This is capacity. And in that moment under the Texas sun, with melted ice cream pooling in a tin bowl, Karl-Heinz Muller understands something no briefing ever taught him. Germany is not losing because of cowardice, or strategy, or betrayal. Germany is losing because it cannot compete with this, and the men around him feel it too. They don't say it out loud, not yet, but as the trays are cleared and more food appears, a quiet fear replaces hunger. Because if America feeds its enemies like this, what chance did Germany ever have? Morning comes early at Fort Bliss. Not with sirens, not with shouting, but with the sound of engines. Trucks, dozens of them, rolling past the barracks before dawn, gears humming smoothly, exhaust steady and controlled. 2 men who have spent months listening for Allied bombers or the cough of dying supply convoys. The sound is unsettling. because nothing is breaking down. Karl-Heinz Müller wakes on a clean cot. Not straw, not damp earth. A real mattress. Thin, yes, but intact. He sits up slowly, half expecting the moment to dissolve, for someone to start screaming, for the illusion to end. It doesn't. A whistle blows. Breakfast, the word still feels wrong in his mouth. They line up again, guarded loosely by American MPs who joke among themselves, cigarettes dangling casually. No helmets, no visible fear. One guard yawns, stretching like a man headed to a factory shift, not overseeing enemy soldiers. Breakfast is eggs. Real eggs. Scrambled, yellow, steaming, bacon, oatmeal, with sugar. Coffee so strong it bites back. Muller watches a young American private pour half his coffee out because it's gone cold. Pour it out. Around the tables. The Germans eat more slowly now. The shock has settled into something heavier. Something analytical. Feldwebel Otto Branner, a veteran of Poland and France, counts unconsciously. Plates. Portions. Seconds. He leans in close. This is not a show, he whispers. They eat like this every day. Another man shakes his head. Impossible. There's supply lines. Brander cuts him off. Look outside. Beyond the mess hall fence, the desert hums with motion. Trucks come and go, constantly. Trains clatter past on schedule. Crates are unloaded by forklifts, machines most of these men have never seen outside propaganda films. Stamped on the crates are words that feel like a taunt. Made in the USA. Muller is assigned to kitchen duty that afternoon. Not as punishment, as labor, paid labor, they're told. A few cents an hour credited to camp accounts. Enough to buy extra food or cigarettes at the commissary. Paid. Inside the kitchen, the scale becomes impossible to ignore. Whole sides of beef hang from hooks. Refrigerated rooms hum softly, preserving more meat than Muller saw in an entire regiment over a year. Milk arrives in metal cans, so large 2 men are needed to move them. An American sergeant notices Muller, staring. First time in a real kitchen, he asks. Not unkindly, Muller nods. The sergeant grins. Stick around. You'll get used to it. That's the problem. He is getting used to it. At lunch, surplus food is scraped into bins again. Perfectly edible food. No hesitation. No accounting. No guilt. Muller watches the cooks joke as they dump it, talking about baseball, about a movie they saw last weekend. Last weekend. As if the war exists somewhere far away. As if it's background noise. That night in the barracks, the conversations change. They don't talk about escape, or victory, or secret weapons anymore. They talk numbers. How many trucks did you see today? Did you notice the fuel depot? It goes on forever. They say this camp is only one of dozens. Someone mentions rumors of camps in Kansas, Arkansas, even New York. Tens of thousands of German posts spread across a continent that hasn't been bombed, that hasn't been starved, that hasn't been pushed to its limits. A young soldier asks the question no one wants to answer. If this is what they give prisoners, what are they giving their factories? Silence. Muller thinks of Germany's factories, of night shifts under blackout curtains, of women replacing men at machines that break faster than they can be repaired, of raw materials rationed so tightly that engineers redesign weapons not to improve them but to make them cheaper. Here, Americans redesign things to make them faster. The difference is crushing. Days pass. Then weeks. The routine becomes relentless in its normality. 3 meals a day, medical checkups, dental care, vaccinations, a library stocked with books, including German ones, newspapers, some censored, but enough leaks through. Stalingrad, Rome fallen, the Allies in Normandy. Each headline lands harder now that Muller understands what stands behind it. Not just soldiers, but farms that overproduce, factories that never sleep, railroads that stretch coast to coast. One afternoon, Muller watches a train roll by, loaded with brand new Sherman tanks, dozens of them. Fresh paint not reaped. He remembers a panzer crew cannibalizing 2 tanks to keep one running. The realization deepens. This war is not being decided by courage, or skill, or sacrifice. It is being decided by volume. That night, as the lights go out, Branner speaks softly in the dark. We were never meant to win this, he says. We were meant to fight it. No one argues, because tomorrow morning, the trucks will come again. The food will appear again. And America's quiet, unstoppable machine will keep turning. And somewhere across the ocean, Germany will fall further behind with every discarded piece of steak. By midsummer, the heat at Fort Bliss becomes something alive. It presses through the barracks walls, sticks to skin, turns uniforms into damp rags by noon. But even this discomfort feels different. It is not the cold hunger of the Eastern Front or the burning thirst of North Africa. This heat does not threaten to kill you. It merely exists. Karl-Heinz Müller learns the rhythm of the camp. Morning roll call. Work details. Meals. Recreation. Lights out. A routine so stable it begins to feel dangerous to the mind. Because routines invite thinking, and thinking leads back to the war. Inside the wire, the Americans allow more freedom than any of the prisoners expected. Soccer matches are organized. A small orchestra forms using instruments borrowed from somewhere off base. There are movie nights, black and white comedies that feel surreal in their cheerfulness. Men laugh, then stop, ashamed. How can they laugh? Someone asks after a film ends. The world is burning, but the truth creeps in quietly. The world is burning somewhere else. One afternoon, Mueller is assigned to unload crates near the rail yard. The work is simple, heavy, but simple. The crates are stenciled with destinations .England, Italy, .France. Every crate is identical, perfectly measured, perfectly labeled. An American corporal notices Mueller reading. Going overseas, he says. More than we can count. How many factories produce this? Mueller asks, unable to stop himself. The corporal shrugs. All of them? All of them. The words echo. Back in Germany, factories compete for coal, for steel, for workers. Here, every factory contributes, coordinated like sections of a single machine. There is no improvisation, no desperation, just flow. Mueller begins to understand something deeply unsettling. America is not fighting at full strain. This is not total exhaustion. This is controlled output. The posts receive letters from home. The tone has changed. Where once there was optimism, now there is fatigue. Apologies. Lines crossed out by censors. Mentions of bombing raids, ration cards, cold apartments. One man folds his letter slowly and says nothing. Another reads his aloud, voice cracking when he reaches the part about bread made with sawdust. That evening, dinner includes roast chicken. Roast chicken. Roast chicken. A prisoner named Hans Richter, barely 20, pushes his plate away. He suddenly feels sick. If my mother saw this, he says quietly, she would think I am lying. No one contradicts him. They talk less about Hitler now, less about speeches and promises. The ideology that once filled long marches and freezing nights has nothing to say about ice cream machines and refrigerator rail. You can almost see belief draining away, not replaced by anger, but by arithmetic, tonnage, calories, miles of track. The war becomes a ledger. One day a U.S. Army chaplain visits the camp. He speaks in careful German, offering conversation, books, a listening ear. Some men scoff. Others line up quietly. Mueller listens from a distance as an older sergeant asks a question that surprises everyone. Is America afraid of losing? The chaplain pauses. No, he says honestly. We're afraid of how long it will take to win. That night, the sentence won't leave Mueller's head. How long it will take? Not if, not maybe, just time. The final illusion breaks when new prisoners arrive fresh, captures from Normandy. They are thinner, dirtier. Their eyes carry something different. Shock. They tell stories of endless artillery, of aircraft that never seemed to stop coming, of supply depots hit and rebuilt before nightfall, of German units retreating, not because they were defeated, but because they were outpaced. They don't stop, one man says. Even when we destroy them, more, Pierre Mueller, recognizes the tone. It is the same one he felt watching steak thrown into a trash bin. The Americans are not superior soldiers. They are superior producers. And inside the wire, surrounded by abundance, the prisoners begin to realize something that no defeat on the battlefield had made clear. The war was decided long before they were captured. Long before Normandy. Long before Stalingrad. It was decided the moment Germany chose a short war, and America prepared for a long one. The question now is not who will win. It's what will be left of Germany when the machine finally stops. And as the camp lights dim, Mueller wonders something else. What happens when men who have seen this go home? Autumn arrives quietly in Texas. The heat loosens its grip. Nights cool. The desert breathes again. For the men inside Fort Bliss, the changing season feels symbolic, though none of them say it out loud. Something has shifted. Karl-Heinz Mueller notices it first in the guards. They are relaxed now. Almost casual to the point of carelessness. Rifles slung loosely. Conversations unhurried. A few even ask the prisoners about home, about Bavaria, about Hamburg, about cities they've only seen on maps. There is no hatred in their voices. No fear, either. That absence is unsettling. One afternoon, Mueller is assigned to a work detail repairing fencing near the perimeter. Beyond the wire, a highway cuts through the desert. Cars pass constantly. New ones, shiny, families inside, children in the back seats. No blackout paint, no ration stickers. A civilian world, untouched. He watches a billboard flash by on a passing truck by war bonds. Keep 'em rolling 'em. Not us, not maybe, them. Later that week, a senior officer visits the camp. Colonel James Patterson, U.S. Army. He gathers a group of German NCOs for a briefing routine, procedural, but something about his tone feels different. Gentlemen, he says evenly, the war in Europe is entering its final phase. Final. No qualifiers, no drama. He explains new work assignments, potential transfers to other camps. Mentions education programs for after the war. English classes. Vocational training. After the war, the phrase lands like a physical blow. That night, the barracks are unusually quiet. Men lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to distant trains, counting time not in days, but in realizations. A former party member finally speaks. His voice is flat. They knew, he says. From the beginning, they knew they would win. No one challenges him. Because everything here supports the idea. The food, the factories, the calm. This is not desperation. This is inevitability. Muller thinks back to 1939. 2 cheering crowds, 2 flags and speeches and promises of swift victory, to the belief that willpower could replace resources. Here, willpower is unnecessary. Here, resources speak for themselves. Weeks later, news arrives of the Ardennes offensive. A last gamble, a final throw of the dice. Some prisoners allow themselves a flicker of hope, but it dies quickly. The Americans don't change their routines. No tightening of rations, no nervous guards, no emergency measures. Steak is still served. Ice cream still melts in metal bowls. And then the headlines shift again. The offensive has failed. Fuel shortages. Fuel shortages. Broken tanks. Exhausted men. Muller closes his eyes as he reads. He can see it clearly now. German soldiers advancing bravely. Then stopping. Not because of bullets, but because there is nothing left to give them. That evening, an American guard tosses an untouched roll into the trash. Muller doesn't flinch this time. The shock is gone. In its place is certainty. Germany did not lose because its soldiers were weak. Germany lost because it entered a war of vengeance, calories, and steel, and tried to win it with faith. As winter approaches, rumors spread of repatriation programs, of camps being reorganized for the end, of prisoners who will one day return home carrying memories no one there will believe. Men who saw the enemy's strength not in battle, but in what they could afford to waste. Muller lies awake, staring into the darkness, thinking of his mother. How will he explain this? How do you describe a country so powerful it feeds its enemies better than you fed your own people? How do you explain that the moment the war truly ended for him was not on a battlefield, but at a table? Watching steak thrown away, spring comes early in Texas. The desert blooms, briefly, almost shyly, as if unsure it's allowed to be beautiful in a world still at war. By now, Fort Bliss feels less like a camp and more like a holding place between 2 lives. Karl-Heinz Muller is thinner than when he arrived, but stronger, better fed, clearer ride, more dangerous. In a different way, because he knows something now. The prisoners gather round a notice board one morning. Orders posted in English and German, transfers, camp consolidations, and then the word they've been waiting for, repatriation, not yet. But soon, the conversations change again. Not about escape, not about victory, but about what to say when they get home. Who will believe us? Hans Richter asks quietly. They think we're being tortured. They won't want to hear it, Brander replies. It sounds like defeatism. Defeatism. Muller almost laughs. He remembers how carefully the Americans handled information. They didn't boast. They didn't humiliate. They simply existed as they were. The message was never spoken. It was demonstrated. As Germany collapses in on itself, news trickles in, fragmented, delayed, but unmistakable. Cities flattened. Factories gone. Civilians starving. And still, inside the wire, the food remains steady. That constancy becomes its own lesson. One afternoon, Muller is allowed to speak with a Red Cross representative. She asks routine questions. Health, treatment, morale. Is there anything you want reported? She asks. He thinks carefully. Yes, he says finally. Tell them we were fed. The woman hesitates, surprised, then she nods. By May 1945, the war in Europe is over. The camp does not erupt in celebration. There are no cheers. Just a strange, heavy silence. Some men sit down where they stand. Others stare into nothing. The Americans mark the occasion with routine. Meals, roll calls, paperwork. Victory here does not need performance. In the weeks that follow, the prisoners are prepared for transport home. Medical checks? New clothes? Information briefings? Warnings about what they will find? Ruins? Shortages? Loss. Mueller boards a ship months later, standing at the rail as the American coastline fades into the distance. Behind him, crates are being loaded, not for war now, but for relief, food, medicine, tools. Even in victory, the machine keeps moving. On the voyage, the men talk quietly. No bravado, no speeches, just reflection. The Americans didn't defeat us, Brandner says. One night they outgrew us. Mueller nods. When he finally steps back onto German soil, the smell hits him first. Smoke, damp stone, emptiness. His hometown is half gone. His mother is thinner, older. She cries when she sees him, then pulls back suddenly, scanning his face. You look healthy, she says, confused. He doesn't answer right away. How could he? Over the following weeks, Mueller tells the story. Carefully, gently, not all at once. About the food, the factories, the trains, the waste. Some listen, some don't. But the truth spreads quietly, like it did in the camp. Germany didn't lose in the ruins of Berlin. It lost the moment it faced a nation that could afford to throw away steak and still keep fighting. Years later, Mueller will remember Fort Bliss not as a prison, but as the place where the war finally made sense, not through bullets, not through flags, but through ice cream melting in the desert heat.